I'm just asking folks to, in the chat, put in where you're zooming in from and why you are here today, what you're hoping to get out of the class.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So Chloe says, here in Portland, as am I, and I've maybe coped with anxiety and fear in one way or another my whole life to varying degrees of effectiveness. Yeah, welcome to the human condition. So just get yourselves comfortable. We'll wait about 1 more minute. Like I said, it might be a small class today, but that's okay. Lucy's in the UK. Cool. And I think this is your first class with me, is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
How'd you find me?
Eventbrite.
Cool.
I think I searched for psychology, either philosophy, which was my first search, and then psychology, but because I love philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And you said you appreciate how the mind and body are one and cannot be separated. Love to know how to control some of the obsessive thoughts. Wouldn't consider me to be OCD when it comes to relationships. I cannot seem to let go of certain people. Would like help with this. That is, I think, something that lots of people can appreciate.
Probably, yes.
And it looks like Hallie is here as well. Hi, Hallie.
Hi.
Welcome.
Sorry, that took a minute.
And Allison is here in Portland. Fear of COVID, death, life, fascism, end of the planet. There's so many things to be afraid of right now. I hope to take a lot of notes and write a poem based on today. Oh, that's nice. I love your poetry. Hallie, we were just in the chat writing where you were zooming in from and what you were hoping to get out of today's class. Feel free to put that in there, but we're actually going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Fear as Peak Experience, which is the way I like to phrase it. I think that we'll talk about what that means. So a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a philosophical coach, which means that I use my PhD in philosophy to help coach and counsel folks through their everyday lives. I'm also a writer and a speaker, and I have a podcast which have not put out a new episode in about a year, but we have a pretty good archive. It's called Think Hard Podcast, and that is talking about philosophy in everyday life. So now you may not have heard of a philosophical coach before, sort of because it's a job I just kind of made up for myself, but there are some people who are doing it, especially Lucy in the UK. It is more popular there than it is in the States.
Hi, can I call you back in an hour? Okay. Okay, thanks.
I think that was Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Oh, hi, sorry.
That's okay. We can.
I thought that I was on mute. Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, so this idea of a philosophical coach is actually kind of a throwback to what the original philosophers were. Like back in ancient Greece, if you had trouble with your life and you wanted to talk to someone about it, there were no psychologists. Psychology was not yet a discipline. Instead, there were priests and philosophers. Those were your two choices. So this is really kind of an old job that is starting to kind of make a comeback. The idea that you can use your philosophical training and skills of critical inquiry and sort of asking a lot of questions, the Socratic method, and an entire body of literature written by people for thousands of years about how to live well and what, how to what is the good life? How do we achieve the good life? What is the right thing to do? How do we know? So that's sort of the tradition that I'm coming out of. I use my PhD in philosophy to help people think clearly, choose wisely, and live purposefully. And I specialize in helping moms grapple with what it means to make a human person. I think that the transition to motherhood is really a huge one and deserves a lot more of our attention. And it's full of real philosophical rigor. So that's the way I like to talk about it. And then I offer one-on-one coaching workshops, and I'm teaching a course right now called The Meaning of Motherhood, and this is its first online iteration. I'll be teaching another cohort in February, and that is sort of an exploration of the philosophy of the existential crisis of motherhood. So that's that. That's me. So for today, we're going to cover why preparing for the worst can fuel anxiety. It's a conversation about fear, right? And so we're going to be talking about anxiety, and we're going to be talking about how to deal with fear. And I'm going to sort of talk about how this idea of preparing only goes so far, and it can actually kind of backfire for us. We're going to talk about the difference between the story of fear and the experience of fear, and I'll kind of talk about what I mean with that. We'll discuss how facing fear actually builds your confidence. We'll talk about why an attitude of experimentation, especially when it comes to our sort of relationship to our own minds, is more likely to be helpful than an attitude of improvement or progress. I think a lot of times we think that we can achieve some sort of like, I don't know, enlightened state at the end of the rainbow. And in fact, it's really just trying things and seeing what works for this particular moment, because every moment is different. And then finally, how to transform your fear. And that's really kind of the meat of what we'll be discussing today. How to turn fear from this sort of controlling boogeyman to, in fact, just kind of a powerless set of sensations, and not see them as connected to your purpose. I don't know why that's there. Okay. And then I'll take a volunteer. If anyone wants to do live coaching, you can volunteer, and I'll spend, 15, 20, 30 minutes chatting with you. Just about how, what particular issue you're struggling with, and we'll see where we can get with that. And then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. Just a note that this is going to be recorded. So I know that this is sort of an intimate topic, talking about fear, but I can almost guarantee that whatever it is that you are dealing with is shared by someone out there. And so I encourage you all to know that I will be kind to you, and my followers out there on the internet are generally kind. I haven't gotten a mean comment on anything yet. So, so that's just a little, if you are not comfortable sharing, of course, feel like you don't need to. And that's that. Does anyone have any questions so far? Good? Okay. So, as you all know, we are dealing with a deadly pandemic right now. There's also record high unemployment and economic crisis happening all over the world, particularly the industrialized world. There's social unrest and civic uprising happening in the streets. It's been sort of bigger than it ever has been, although it's been going on for a while, and it's been sort of a long time coming. In the States here, our political climate is unraveling quickly, hopefully not permanently, but it is more uncertain perhaps than it's been in a century. And oh yeah, don't forget natural disasters, hurricanes, wildfires, destruction of homes and property. It's all happening right now, and it's enough to make you kind of want to just curl up in the fetal position and not leave a white void. So I'm sure all of you know that already. And as I am talking about all of these things, I can feel my own stomach starting to tighten a little bit, get a little elevated there. So I just want to start by saying it is reasonable to be scared right now, right? There is a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really intense stuff going on for all of us. And it is reasonable, and I mean in the sense of like, if you are a person with reason, you are looking at the world and thinking, this feels threatening. This feels threatening to my sense of security and safety, and it's uncertain, so I don't know what's coming. I don't know how to prepare. I don't know, if I'm safe in the future, right? If I'm safe now, what does that mean? And will I be safe in the future? So there's this fear that seems to be kind of percolating for all of us in the background. And so this is not a kind of Pollyanna, like, well, look at all of these like happy things that are happening, or like, it's not that bad because maybe the virus will just go away, right? It's like I'm not going to do any of that, right? I'm not going to patronize any of you. Instead, I know that things are bad. It's reasonable to be scared, right? The question is, how do you feel fear without being controlled by it? That's really what we are talking about today. It's not about stopping feeling fear. It's about how to change your relationship to fear so that you can function better in the world. Okay, so that's really the goal. So in order for us to think about that, we need to consider what I'm going to call the story of fear versus the feeling of fear. So the story of fear is your brain spinning out tales of all the horrifying things that are happening in the past, in the present, in the future, right? This is here is what's going on in the world, here's what it means, here's what I don't know, and what if this will happen, and what if that will happen, and it's your sort of, it's the cognitive part of the fear, right? The storytelling part. Now, those stories may be true, they may be untrue, right? They may come from the news, they may come from your life, they may, be imagined futures, they may be memories of the past, right? They may be happening right now, but it is the storytelling part of your mind that tells you what's going on right now. And then there's the feeling of fear, right? And so by that, for the purposes of this class today, I'm going to talk about that as the actual physical bodily sensation of fear. Right? So that is things like your throbbing pulse, your tight jaw, maybe a tingling or numb face. I always get when I get freaked out, I get numb right in here. My lips get numb, my fingertips get numb, right? And this is the physiology, right? And this happens, you get these sensations because when you are in that fight or flight, your amygdala gets activated. You're in this fight or flight bodily response saying there's a threat. I don't know what the threat is. I got to figure out what's going on. And your heart starts pumping faster, right? Adrenaline goes to your body to get ready to fight or flight. And these physical experiences are the result of your nervous system being ready to deal with the fear in a physical way, right? Of course, to deal with the fear in a physical way is hard to do when it's something like the economy, right? Like, how do you deal with that, a crashing economy in a physical way? So already we see sort of a disconnect between our physical sensations and what's happening out there and the story that we're telling about what's happening out there. So we often tell this story of fear, and it's funny because we do it, right? We find ourselves kind of like obsessively, if you're like me, obsessively checking the news or obsessively like trying to solve the problem, right? Or like spin out on fear stories. And so I'm going to ask you all this question, and feel free to either unmute yourself or to put it in the chat. Like, why is it that we continue to tell ourselves this story of fear? Why do we spend so much time thinking about all of the horrible things that might befall us, or have befallen us, or are befalling us? Why is that a pastime of ours?
I think it feels a little bit more hopeful, or it's nice to think that we can do something about it. And so if we spend all this time thinking about how we can fix the problem, then maybe we'll come up with a solution rather than just being like, I can't do anything about it, like the end.
So that's interesting. I mean, in a way, it's like part of the fearful feeling may also be accompanied by a feeling of powerlessness. And somehow if we believe that if we think about it enough, then we can like overcome the powerlessness to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Allison says, I'm safer thinking about it than ignoring it or being in denial. That's interesting. To think that if I get in front of it, then somehow I can I'll be safer because I won't be sidelined by it.
Right. And I go back and forth, thinking about things back and forth between surfing the news and feeling if I'm informed, I'm going to be able to change all this, and then just feeling that it's not productive to actually know unless there's an action that goes with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's part of the problem, right? Is that it often is just sort of spinning.
Right. It doesn't actually do anything to be forwarding a message to people who already are on the same wavelength that I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chloe says, I have no idea why I do this. Right. So here's my guess as to why we do this. Right. This is just my sense of it. One is to make meaning of the situation. So we're trying to figure out why we feel uncomfortable. A lot of times the sensations of fear that we feel, the bodily response, happens before we even have put together a story, right? It comes first. So we have this sort of immediate physical response, and then it's like, why am I feeling this way? What's going on, right? Again, that amygdala, like sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive, everything gets tense, your senses get really heightened, and then you look around and you say, what's going on? What's happening right now? Why am I feeling this way? What's putting me in danger, right? And so we're trying to just make meaning of this uncomfortable feeling as part of it, right? And sometimes we get sort of I think we get kind of addicted to that feeling, right? And then even if there's nothing like really necessarily bothering us, we go scanning for something to be worried about, right? It's this feeling of like, I'm uncomfortable, there must be some reason, let me go find a reason to be worried, right? And then we end up on a rabbit hole down Twitter or whatever your drug of choice is. And then I think the second reason that we do this is that we're trying to avoid this sensation, the feeling, right? The physical sensation. And we do that, I think, for two reasons, or in two ways. One is to distract ourselves, right? Because the feeling of fear is really uncomfortable. The sensations of that heightened, adrenaline and blood pressure and, tingling sensation, whatever, that's actually a really, most of the time, uncomfortable feeling. And so part of it is we keep our mind really busy, right? I got to be up here in my brain telling stories because I don't want to feel what I'm feeling right now. My body just feels too much. I got to get out of here. So I'm going to spend a lot more time thinking about this. So one is just to try and put some distance between ourselves and our body. And then the second thing I think is what people have said is trying to solve the problem, right? Clearly there's a problem. There's a reason I'm afraid. If I think about it enough, maybe I can solve the problem, right? But as you all have said already, often that's not what happens. What happens is that we have this experience of feeling the fear, right? We feel the fear, the sensations, the actual physical bodily sensations. We don't like it. It's uncomfortable, right? And then we tell yourself a scary story about what it means because we're trying to make meaning of it. We're trying to escape it. And that scary story means that the sensation of fear becomes more intense, right? That physical sensations get intensified, right? Then we're scrolling down the news and suddenly get more amped up. And then we just go around the circle again. And we don't like it, it's uncomfortable. And then we go tell a story and then we get more, becomes more intense and so on and so forth. And then the next thing you know, like an hour has passed and you like are breathing really heavy and your head hurts and you just want to like go to sleep. Anyone? Is it just me? Chloe's putting her hands up. All right. So that's my sense of how this actually, how we live this. So the problem is that this is akin to throwing tinder on a fire in an effort to extinguish the fire, right? It's like the fire is burning, it's uncomfortable, it's bad. And every time we tell ourselves another story about why we're feeling this way, it's like we're throwing another piece of like kindling on the fire, right? And the fire just gets bigger. And we're like, oh, that fire is too big, quick, put another twig on it. And then it gets bigger, right? Obviously it's not gonna work. So what do we do about it? Well, step one, stop throwing tinder on the fire, right? I think that is step one. We have to just say that, like, look, this process of storytelling or trying to escape this physical feeling by thinking our way out of it, it doesn't work. Maybe every once in a great while you will come up with some like fabulous idea that will solve all of your problems, and that, like, you know, once in a 10,000 time moment is enough to like keep you coming back for that. But most of the time, vast majority of the time, it doesn't actually work. We can't think ourselves out of this feeling because it's two different things, right? There's the story and there's the sensation. So what I'm going to propose for today, oh, Chloe, you had a question.
Yeah, can I just interrupt real quick? So when you show the spiral, that cycle, you know, not spiral, well, it is because it never ends, right? So I feel like, honestly, thank you, I'm perpetually stuck at the feeling piece. The thoughts that I have are almost a reflection of the feeling, because it's like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like the initial reason that I'm feeling the response, the fight or flight, is like, it's so far back in the trajectory that I have now reached that I'm just like, when I was little, I used to throw up all the time and I fainted, and it's all this fight or flight stuff. And it's been a lifetime of working to like just mitigate the responses so that they're not interfering with my life, so I'm not puking all day. And like, so I feel like I've you know, gotten that under control, and then I just don't understand like how to get unstuck from that one piece. And then there's all, like you said, then I do the thing where I add the kindling, because then I do go and I read the news, and then it's like, so I, you know.
Right, so it sounds like you've become, like, not only are you afraid of the initial sort of trigger back here, but now there's also being afraid about how your body's going to respond when you're afraid.
Yeah.
So you're being afraid of being afraid.
Yep. It's real
Right.
fun.
Right. So then you just add like another, you had another log that you wanted to put on the fire. You're like, this will burn for a while. I can get a lot of mileage out of this one. Right. So it's just, but I'm guessing there is another story there for you, which is, if you get too worked up, you're going to throw up. You're gonna have these like really intense physical responses that you don't want, right? And you have, like, that's part of the story that you're telling.
So I've got two stories. I've got the whatever that is going on in the world and the climate and all that, and then like sort of this like sub story that's just trickle. Okay, I mean, that helps me like picture it. So.
I think that most of us do, actually. And the Buddhists actually have a term for this. So this, they call the second arrow, or at least I call it the second arrow. I got it from Buddhism, right? And the idea is that when you're like, so let's assume fear, right? Like, fear is like being struck by an arrow, right? And it hurts, and it's hard, and it's bad, right? But then rather than like dealing with the arrow, instead you're like, oh, that's a bad feeling for you to have. You better not feel that way, which is essentially like striking yourself with a second arrow, right? Which is another like bad feeling. right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, now you're freaking out about freaking out. Way to go with that. And then you hit a third arrow, right? And you can just do this all day. And I know this because I have done it myself. Right? Does that seem resonant for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
In a very like alarming sort of.
it just gets folded in with the story, right? It's just a different kind of story that is really a story about how we relate to our own minds, right? And what kind of people we're supposed to be, what kind of mind we're supposed to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a little, just lump it in to the story part. Yeah. Okay. So here's my, anyone else have any questions actually before I go on? Or any thoughts? Okay. So here's my sense of how to actually deal with this in a way that is sort of a tool that you can take. And I get this from my background in meditation. So I've done a few 10-day silent meditation retreats where it's just like meditating 12 hours a day for 10 days. It's pretty intense. And that experience has taught me how to deal with very intense feelings. And here's what I've gathered from that. The best way to deal with really any emotion, but I think that today I'm going to talk about it particularly with fear, because I think fear has a certain kind of quality to it, is to give yourself a chance to actually feel the fear. And I think the best way to do that, and this is something that you can do yourself at home, is to give yourself a kind of like container for the fear. Because I think part of the thing that makes this so challenging and difficult to deal with is that it sort of seeps into all parts of our lives. Like it's this low level thing in the back of our brains that we can't actually, we don't address, and it feels like it seeps into everywhere. So instead, what I would recommend is trying to give yourself a container. So set aside 15, 20 minutes where you don't have any distractions as best you can. If you have children, that might be difficult to do these days, but see if you can find 15, 20 minutes. And in this 15, 20 minutes, you're going to do your very best to drop the fear story. And that includes not only the horrors of the world that are happening around us. And again, I'm not trying to minimize those things. When I say drop the story, it doesn't mean pretend like those things aren't important or pretend like they're not as bad as they are. They're bad. We get it. It's hard. And you may be dealing with things in your own life, in your personal life, that are really, really challenging and are absolutely important to you. I'm not asking you to minimize those. What I'm asking is that in those 15, 20 minutes, you give yourself a break. Give yourself a break from telling yourself a story about those things. And as best you can, you give yourself a break from the kind of story that Chloe just mentioned, which is, I'm supposed to feel a certain way, or that these feelings that I'm feeling are not okay feelings to have. Which, you know, is not easy to do. Most of us grow up in this world being told that our feelings are not okay to have, right? So I'm not saying this is an easy task, but I think it is a worthwhile task to attempt, right? So as best you can for those 15 minutes, you're going to say, all right, I'm going to drop the thinking part. And instead, I'm going to turn my attention to the feeling of fear, the sensations in my body. Now, this is a way, I mean, Lucy at the beginning talked about the relationship between the mind and the body. I think this is a moment where we want to integrate these two things again. Because remember, I said part of what we do is try and escape the physical sensations by telling a story up here. And then meanwhile, this is all bubbling down here and it's making us really uncomfortable. Instead, we're going to try and drop the story and reintegrate with our bodies, right? Actually bring your attention to what your body is feeling. And I think for these 15 or 20 minutes, if you really want to do this and really go for it, not only do you just try and feel what your body's feeling, but you invite fear in. You ask it to come into your body all the way. So much so that there's not even a you, it's like you become the fear. There's not even a you there to experience it. It's as if your entire body is fear. Sort of a weird thing to say, but I think it's the best way I can articulate how to do this. And it's like, it's changing your relationship to what this fear is, because we're always trying to resist it and run away from it and push it away from us. And this is actually saying, okay, fine, come and get me. Come and get me, fear. I want to feel it. I'm going to feel it all the way. I'm going to go on the ride, right? And then when you do that, breathe your way through it. Right? Breathe, breathe, breathe. Because I think, and I say this just from having had this experience myself. Oh, and this is an important part. We'll come back to that. Be as curious as you can. Because I think that what happens is that, you know, fear is something like we, again, are trying to resist or push away, but people get scared on purpose, right? We are just a few weeks away from Halloween, which is an entire national holiday designed to invite fear into our lives, right? And yes, maybe in a fun, like, costuming way, right? But I think there is a kind of wisdom to this tradition of taking time to face our fear, right? Because fear is something, again, that people seek out. This is why we go on roller coasters. This is why we see scary movies, or go skiing, or go on first dates, or, you know, do things that are inviting fear. Go on haunted houses, right? It's a thrill, right? Chloe, I hate all of those things. Yeah, well, there must be something that is sort of exciting, even though it's a little scary, right? Even if it's like trying a new food, right? Might be like, I had oysters recently. I'm always just like a little afraid to eat raw oysters, and then I remember that they're good, but that little bit, it's just like, am I gonna regret this? Travel, that's a good one. Right, travel is really scary. Going somewhere unfamiliar, right? Totally unknown, but it's thrilling, right? We seek these things out. So I think that if you're in this container where you're trying to welcome fear in, often what will happen is that the fear will come into your body. What I have found, if you really say, like, all right, come and get me, what happens is that you get really, like, the experience is intense, physically intense. For me, I get really lightheaded, my heart goes fast, my face gets numb, my fingertips get numb, my body starts tingling all over, my stomach sort of tightens, my chest sort of tightens, right? It is this like feeling, right? And if we can welcome that feeling in, so much so that we're not even going to try and resist it, we're just going to become the fear. We're going to let our body do that fear thing. And we're just going to take it for a ride. And often what happens is that we have this story, the story comes in that's like, oh, you can't handle this. This is terrible. Why are you doing this? Don't do this. This is bad, right? But what I'm going to encourage is if you see that coming in, if that story is the one that wants to jump back into your brain, that you start to tell yourself a new story around fear. And that fear, it's like, I heard a quote once that fear is just excitement without the breath, right? And when you stop resisting fear, fear can be kind of exhilarating and kind of exciting and kind of juicy. It's like It's like a really intense experience. It can really make you feel alive. Like you're in a body that's doing things, and that you're here on this planet and you know what it means to be alive in this world. You might even call it a peak human experience, right? And that if you can just give yourself the space, that container to feel it, then, and allow it to get as big as it wants, then at least you're not throwing more tinder on that fire. And you're just sort of letting it burn. And the burning is okay. Right? And that is what it means, that you're getting in touch with what is alive in you. What is alive inside your body, what is alive inside your mind. So I'm gonna actually pause here for a second. What do people think of this kind of just turning towards? What are your initial reactions? Good idea, bad idea? Have you ever done it before? Do you want to do it? What do you think it might get you if you actually did? Chloe says it might allow me to avoid it less or process it even easier, maybe, eventually, someday.
I don't know, maybe going through it would show us that the worst case scenario is not here yet.
Mm.
It could minimize it.
Yeah, I think that it lets us, I mean, I think this is sort of what you were talking about, Allison, is that it's sort of like the moment in the scary movie where the monster gets revealed, right? It's a lot scarier when you don't actually see it because your imagination can kind of run away from you. But when you actually turn toward it, you learn the nature of the feeling you've been avoiding, right? You get to see the monster.
Right. I mean, also with the scary movies, they do run according to a formula, and really there is a predictable outcome to them.
Mm. And you think that how does that relate here?
Maybe the fear in what seems impossible and unimaginable really is going to run its course or be on a trajectory that we can predict.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting.
Maybe.
I think that that's right, that there is sort of an arc to it. It's an arc to it. I think the other thing it teaches you is that you actually can be with it, right? Whatever the thing is, you can be with it. And it tells you too that if you can sit with the fear now, you can actually also sit with the fear in the future, because the fear itself, like the sensation doesn't actually change much, right? The story can change, what the fear is directed to can change, but the sensation, the actual physical sensations of the fear doesn't change a whole lot.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. So what I would recommend then, here's the end of my little recommendation, is after you do this kind of 15, 20-minute little container for yourself, you sit, you get comfortable, you give yourself some space, you take some deep breaths, You tell yourself you're going to drop the storyline of fear as best you can, and you're going to welcome in the sensation and the feeling of fear. You sit with that sensation, you let it wash over you, you stop resisting it, you let it wash through you all the way. And what I find is that there is a kind of arc to it. It intensifies to a certain point, and then human physiology is such that we can't actually stay there for very long, right? And there's different research that talks about how long that actual like peak discomfort lasts, right? But it's really only a few minutes, right? That we're up at that top peak fear experience. And then it starts to kind of decline. What I have found is that you kind of go up, it declines. If you want to kind of go through it again, you can kind of do a second round where you're like, all right, let's go through this again. And you welcome fear back in, you let it sort of roll through you, you go up and down, right? But it sort of peters off. Usually what my experience is afterwards is I get kind of like a fear hangover, right? Where like my stomach sort of hurts, or like I just feel kind of like gross after that. It's like when you come off a roller coaster, right? And you're just like, ooh, my body just did something, right? It's this kind of catharsis and like hangover feeling at the end. And so what I find that the best way to kind of close the container and to put sort of a soothing cap on it is to end with what the Buddhists call metta meditation, which stands for compassion or loving kindness. And I've made a video of a very quick and easy metta meditation. You can find on my YouTube channel. It's essentially well-wishing to yourself and others. And I think that that's a really good way to close this experience, because it brings some sort of warm sensations or comforting sensations after what are usually pretty uncomfortable sensations, and leaves you feeling a little bit more settled, a little bit more grounded. And also, I think the kind of compassion is a really key part, because compassion is the other side of the coin, right? Those intense sensations of fear or anger or, I don't know. I mean, those are really the two big ones. Anxiety, right? Regret, shame, whatever the things we're feeling, if we really allow ourselves to feel them all the way, it's like we are allowing ourselves to be vulnerable to that experience of being alive. And that means we are also allowing ourselves to be open to the experience of love and connection and compassion more so. Because if you close off, if you try and resist the feeling of fear or the feeling of anger or regret or any of those other things, if you want to shut yourself off from them, you're also shutting down your capacity for love and connection and compassion, because they go together. You cannot selectively choose these things, right? And the more open you can be to allowing yourself to experience fear fully, the larger capacity you have to experience the fear inside other people and the anger or the shame inside other people, because you know that you can handle it. If you can handle it in yourself, you can handle it in others, and you can allow them to be afraid or to be angry without telling stories about what it means, without getting defensive or shutting down. And it increases our capacity for compassion. So I recommend finishing this experience by reminding yourself that you are here, right now, and that you're safe. And then this sort of practice of well-wishing yourself and others. So here is my thought. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to open up to a couple questions. And my thought is, either we can spend the next 20 minutes or so we actually have quite a bit of time in a pretty small class, so we might have time for both. But if you all are up for it, I could lead you through this experience, and we can actually try and do it now here together. If you'd rather not, then we can just sort of continue to talk our way through it. I do think there is something really helpful about having a guide through this experience and actually physically doing it. But it's also, you know, may not be the thing that you wanted to do on a Sunday afternoon. So I'll just open it up and people can tell me, you know, what you're thinking. If we don't do a guided meditation, then I can just talk to someone about how you are feeling and how you're dealing with this, and you can ask questions in a kind of one-on-one coaching moment. I think my preference might be to actually kind of do it together. Chloe's up for trying. Hallie, Allison, what do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
I need to step out for about 2 minutes, but I will be back.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I encourage actually all of you to get yourself comfortable if you need to grab some water or whatever. And if you want to, you're welcome to keep your video on. If you want to turn it off, more comfortable that way, that's fine too. And go ahead and find someplace comfortable for yourself. And we're going to do this together. I'll talk you through it. And remember throughout this whole thing that I am here and you are there, but whatever room you are in, you are safe in, at least for this moment, right? Remind yourself that there's no physical threat to you right now where you are. So find a space, close your eyes. Let's take some deep breaths. Sort of settled. Now you may already be feeling a little bit of nerves about doing this. That's okay. That means we're just like getting the fear up and running. And I want you just to take a moment, just give yourself permission to tell whatever scary story to yourself you want, right? Whether it is about the latest on COVID-19 or your employment prospects or what's happening coming out of the White House or racial injustice or any of the many natural disasters, there's clearly something, right? You might feel your sort of sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight nervous system start to kind of kick up, even just me mentioning those words, right? Take a minute and just kind of let your fear brain go wild. Right? It might be feeling like we're having to prepare for a political coup. Who knows? Right? And as you feel your sort of self start to get activated in that fear, okay, I'm going to take another couple breaths. One more. And now, as best you can, drop the storyline of that fear and turn your attention toward what is physically happening in your body. You can feel your legs, your stomach, chest, jaw, in between your eyes, your head, your fingertips, your lips. What is that feeling of that sort of low-level buzzing of fear? And as your mind tries to escape this feeling by returning to the story, whatever it is, whatever thing you're worried about, and maybe you're afraid for a loved one or for yourself. Whatever that story is, when your mind wants to get up out of this room and go follow that story, just try and come back into your seat, into your body, and sit right here and stay right here. Let the fear go. Let the story go. Come back to the sensation. And breathe. And now we're going to invite this fear. You're going to invite this fear into your body. This thing that you have been resisting and running from and trying to avoid and trying to solve away. You're just going to face it. You're going to invite it into your body and say, all right, fear, let's do this. Come on in. And you're just going to observe what's happening there. What does it feel like to allow fear to enter your body? Let it all the way in. Keep coming. Let that fear all the way in. Stop trying to resist it. It's like you become the fear. There's nothing to even keep it away. It's just your entire body is fear. It takes over. And breathe and just observe. It's okay. This is just sensation. And maybe it's a really intense sensation. Good, it means you're alive. Observe it. Maybe your insides are trembling. Anxiety is moving. You can feel the adrenaline coursing through your body. Tingling, a numbness, a tightness, a lightheadedness. This is the rush. It's the rush of fear. Breathe into it. Allow yourself to go on that ride. This is what it is to be alive in a body. To be open to your experience. To be awake in the world. You just let it course through you. And just be curious, what's happening? It's not good or bad or right or wrong. Just observe. And allow. And be open. Let the fear move in and through you. Allow it to go into every corner and crack of your body. And stop resisting, because you can be here with this. This is all it is. It's just sensation. It's just the feeling. Story is something different. Drop the story. Come back to this moment in this body. This is what fear feels like. Really try and bring your attention to your different body parts. What does it feel like in your back? What does it feel like in your legs, your hips, your lungs, chest? Not trying to change anything, just noticing. Just noticing. Allowing it to be. This feeling is okay. This feeling is welcome. This feeling is what it means to be alive. If it comes with tears, let the tears come. And if it ever feels too overwhelming, you can sort of rock yourself side to side. Maybe tap your feet side to side. And you can bring your attention to the palms of your hands, which tend to usually be pretty soft. And if it gets too overwhelming and you need to open your eyes and get grounded again, do that. But remember that right here, right now, you are okay, you are safe. And this is just a sensation in your body. Doesn't mean anything. It's just part of being alive in a human body. Maybe it's starting to taper off for you. Maybe you want to welcome that fear in again. Take another trip around the roller coaster. You're already here. Say, okay, let's do this. I can breathe through it. I'm still here. Got through it the first time. Let's do it again. Come on in, fear. I'm ready for you. All the way in, everywhere, all parts. I'm not even going to resist. I am dissolving into fear. There's nothing but fear in my body. Maybe you feel all the sensations intensify again. Another trip down the big drop of that roller coaster. And breathe into it. Remember that this can be exciting. It's a thrill. It is what is alive in you. Let it be alive. And just observe what's happening in your jaw, what's happening in your neck, hands and fingers. What's happening in your stomach? And again, you can go move side to side. You don't need to tell yourself any story about what any of this is, or what it means, or where it's from, or what it says about you as a person. All you're doing is allowing your body to express its aliveness. And opening up to your body's aliveness in this moment. If you haven't yet, go ahead and rock side to side. Maybe tap your feet left and right. Take some deep breaths. You did it. And just observe. Observe as the sensations run their course. You may not be all the way done, probably not. That's okay. If you want to sit and ride it out some more, feel free. But allow it to sort of naturally de-intensify, de-escalate. Remind yourself that you are safe. You are right here in that room, wherever you are. Let's together take a few deep breaths. You may be feeling a little uncomfortable still. It's okay. You might be feeling that fear hangover, sort of nausea or sour stomach feeling. That's okay. Let's take another breath. You just observe that too. Do one more. When you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. I encourage you to drink some water. Sort of shake it out. And I'm also going to lead you through the metta meditation, which I think will be a really good sort of antidote to that. Allison asked a question, how do you stop the stories? It's hard. It's hard. We'll talk about it after the metta meditation. Okay, we'll come back to it. For now, just so we can not leave everybody too long in this kind of raw transition-y place, we're going to do really quick 5-minute little metta meditation. And you can get yourself settled again. And we're going to start. I really recommend that you do the hand motions here. I think that it really helps. So as I do, you take your hands, put them over your heart, one on top of the other, or if you want, you put one on your heart, one on your belly, whichever feels good for you. And we're going to sort of spend a little time wishing well to ourselves because we just went through a lot. Our bodies just went through a lot. And we're going to give ourselves some kindness. So we're going to say this little script, and this is just one that I learned. You don't have to use these exact words if they don't work for you, but for now, I'll give you this little script and you can repeat after me if you want, either in your head or aloud. And as you do, you're going to imagine, if you can, a sort of white light, maybe starting in the center of your body, a little pinprick of a white light. And as you say these words, you can imagine it starting to grow throughout your body. Sort of white light of kindness and compassion. You're going to say after me, may I be well. May I be happy. May I know love. May I know peace. A lot of times it's hard for us to feel those feelings towards ourselves. So if it didn't come with a whole lot of feeling, that's okay. Just sort of imagine that little white light growing a little bit as you say it. And now we're going to turn our attention towards someone or some being, some creature, maybe an animal, pet, maybe a friend or relative, that you have a kind of easy access to kindness and compassion, that you really can easily tap into that feeling of well-wishing. And you hold that person in mind. And again, as you say these words, you imagine the white light filling them up, sort of filling their body. You say to this being, may you be well. Oh, and you bring your hands out a little bit far in front of you, from your chest out just a little bit in front of you. Okay, and you bring that person or creature to mind, and you say, may you be well. May you be happy. May you know love. May you know peace. Really try and generate those feelings and feel them inside you. Feel them filling up that person. And now we're going to take our arms out just a little bit wider, and we're going to imagine kind of a neutral person, someone that you don't really know that well. Maybe it's a neighbor, or I don't know, someone that you used to pass on the street when people passed each other on the street, or when we used to go grocery shopping or whatever. Or maybe it's just some sort of androgynous, anonymous, faceless individual. Okay, just a being, a neutral person. You imagine that person, and you're going to send that white light to this person as you say to them, may you be well. May you be happy. May you know love. May you know peace. And now we're going to take our arms out a little bit wider. And now we're going to bring someone to mind with whom we have a difficult relationship, or it's challenging for us to think about cultivating compassion. And that person, again, we're going to imagine the white light filling them up as we say to that person, may you be well. May you be happy. May you know love. May you know peace. And now we're going to take our arms all the way out, as wide and as big as you can make them. And I really encourage you to do this. It feels really good. It's good for your brain. And you're going to imagine all beings everywhere, all over the planet. So we are all in this together. People, animals, near and far. And we're going to say to all of them, as we feel that white light surrounding the whole world, may you be well. May you be happy. May you know love. May you know peace. And now you're going to bring all of that kindness and compassion and love and well wishes, and you're going to bring it back to your heart, back to the being that deserves your love and compassion and kindness more than anyone else on the planet, yourself. And you're going to say, as you feel that white light glowing within you, may I be well. May I be happy. May I know love. And may I know peace. And I hope that that was a nice closing for you. It always makes me feel good, centered, grounded again. And remembering that that compassion, that capacity for compassion is the other side of the coin of feeling our feelings. Because the more we allow ourselves to feel the uncomfortable ones, the more space we have made to feel the pleasant ones too. So if and when you're ready, feel free to come back on screen so I can see you again. I wanted to ask Allison, you had a question about storytelling.
Yeah, I just, it seems like the narrative is so much a part of me. It is the struggle to separate just the matter and the feeling and the material of fear from those stories. And it only takes an image or the beginning of a story, and there goes the narrative again.
Yeah, it's challenging. Don't get me wrong, it's challenging. And I think that there's two thoughts I have. One is that you may not, thoughts are not necessarily a bad thing, right? Even those thoughts of like scary stories are not necessarily bad things. They might have a good purpose, right? And so don't resist them too much, right? It's like if I say like don't think of a pink elephant, right? Like the first thing that pops in your mind is a pink elephant, right? So the more, this old song said like whatever you resist persists, right? So like if you're just like, that thought is bad, and you get really aggressive in pushing it away, it's really gonna like stick with you, right? I find that the attitude to kind of have with it, for me, what has been helpful is just like treating the thought like almost like a child, that you're like, I see you, I appreciate you, I see that you have something important to tell me, I need 5 minutes, right? Just like, just give 5 minutes, I will come back to you, I promise, I will come back to you, right? And they'll be there, it will wait, don't worry about it getting lost, right? But just sort of trusting like, okay, thank you for like trying to tell me whatever it is you're going to tell me, or like keep me safe, or whatever it is you think you're doing. But just for these 5 minutes, I'm just not going to engage with you, right? Or I'm going to like really try and not to engage, and I'll come back. So if you can just wait a few minutes, I'll come back to you. Does that feel helpful at all?
Yes, I like that.
When I first started meditating, it was after I had this like really ugly breakup, and I was looking for something to kind of give me some solace. And then, I've been doing it for a couple months, and then I met someone new, and I was like really excited about him. And so then instead of all of like the terrible, like sad, depressing thoughts that I wanted to escape, suddenly the thoughts that were coming into my brain was just like, this guy's great. And I wanted to like think about the new relationship, right? And those were like just as tempting as all of the bad horror show thoughts, right? And I literally had to like say to my thoughts, like, I know I'm really excited too, but for now, for these few minutes, like I'm gonna do this and I'll come back to you, okay? Like you just wait there. I promise we'll get excited about this together, but just for these like 10 minutes that I'm meditating, I'm not gonna do that. Because then it doesn't demonize them, and you don't like blame yourself, you don't blame the thought, you don't like, again, if you try and just be like, God, why am I thinking I'm so bad at this? I'm terrible at, doing things. Then you've got a whole new set of thoughts to deal with, right? Another storyline. Right, so just sort of thank them for being there. Tell them you'll come back to them.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions? We have, if you want, we got about 10 minutes left to just do a Q&A or give your responses. Tell me how that experience was for you, if it was helpful or not, and what feedback you have. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want, or to put it in the chat.
I was surprised how many different sensations I could pin down when I let my mind wander away from the few that I guess are the ones that I have the most self-judgment surrounding. And I think at least a dozen times had to be like, oh my God, my jaw is so clenched, like relax that. But yeah, it was really just like such a different thing, because you spend so much energy trying to shut the feelings down, which historically has worked exactly 0 times for me. So then to just be like, oh, like it's like the power of naming it, and then sort of, purposefully letting it in feels like you're in control. And then walking through that and giving it a second, and then like there's like a little bit of I have like a headache right now, but I would take this any day over the spiraling, puking, falling on the floor crap. So that's my takeaway.
That's great. I was thinking about you, Chloe, because you talked about your pretty intense physiological reactions, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I hope that she's like still upright.
Yeah, this is a good sign. I'm speaking. I'm not white as a sheet. We're doing great.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like, yes. Okay, so you have a headache. Headaches sort of suck sometimes, but it's also maybe comes with a little bit of peace of mind, because you can know that you did that. You could do it. You can actually sit and face the fear and allow your body to experience it.
And come out the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, it doesn't really matter what the thing, like I said before, it doesn't matter what the future brings. This sensation of fear, like, yeah, it may be like there are different, like you identified all these different sensations, right? Tense jaw, or like maybe things that you don't usually notice, right? And those, whichever particular sensations are more or less intense, might change and will change because our body physiology changes all the time. But the quality of the feeling is mostly the same. Whatever scary thing tomorrow brings, you can do this again with that. And you can survive that. Allie, any thoughts? Quiet.
I was kind of surprised, I guess, to find out more of what was in those feelings, or like what feelings were behind those feelings. I think I made a lot of assumptions about like, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what the fear would be if I were to engage in it. And finding like that was maybe true in the beginning, but it kind of evolves also, or like also brings up other emotions or other feelings. And yeah, there was just more there than I thought.
Right, and so we get to know the nature of what we're dealing with, right, in a more intimate way. And I think that's a great discovery, right? Because then it's like, oh, well, it turns out that actually it's, I've done this exercise with groups before, and I've had people say like, oh, what I discovered was actually not, that behind all that fear was really just a lot of grief, sadness. That's what I was dealing with. I was just really freaking sad. And then you can allow your grief to speak. You can allow your body, you can feel your feelings, right? And allow them to move through you. Which I think really does a lot for calming the nervous system. And so going back to that fear cycle, right? This idea that instead of saying, okay, this is uncomfortable, I'm going to try and solve the problem by telling stories about it, and that's going to intensify the fear, and I'm going to go around it again and again. Instead, it's, I feel this feeling, I'm just going to feel the feeling. And I'm going to let the feeling, I'm not going to let the feeling be. The end, right? Like you don't have to like get through the cycle, right? It stops it. You're stopping throwing tinder on the fire. You're just going to let it sort of burn and be like, yeah, that's uncomfortable. Sometimes life is uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad, or you're wrong or bad. It's like you're alive in a human body, and human bodies get uncomfortable sometimes. It's a very different relationship to our emotions. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, if you do have thoughts or questions in the future, please contact me, daniellelasusa.com. I really appreciate you all being here today. I hope that you are all well and stay well. Drink some water. Give yourself a hug.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate all of you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.